Okay. So, hey, Cyril, how are you?
I'm
And thank
great.
you for coming. Appreciate it. Yeah,
Thank you for having me.
definitely. I know you and your sister were all born in California, but your family originally come from Hong Kong, and you speak
Correct.
some like Cantonese, right?
I do. I do. My Cantonese is far better than my Mandarin, but I know a little bit of Mandarin as well.
I understand. Yeah, and I also know that you graduated from UC Berkeley,
That's
and
correct.
also the UC, the Hastings College of the Law.
Correct.
And but quite impressive that right now you serve as a senior deputy district attorney at the Orange County District Attorney Office and
Correct.
specializing in the gang executions. That's a ton of work for you, right?
Yeah, it's I've been doing this for about 18 years, so I've gotten much better at putting cases together much faster. But yeah, it's a lot of work for sure.
Yeah, sure. Also, I think in our community, we all know that you have been serving as the board of directors for the South Coast Chinese Culture Center, the Urban Chinese School, for many years, and actually including 2 years as a chairman of the board. So you have put a lot of the changes in that board, and a lot of people in this community really appreciate your work.
Thank you.
So yeah, so you have been living in Irvine for 10 years. I know you have two daughters, and one is going to the Uni High School, and the other one is going to the Turtle Rock Elementary School. All right?
That yes.
Yes.
Although this year everything's virtual, we'll see how things go.
Sure, yeah. And I know that you put a lot of things focus, of your life in education. And I think that's right now you're running for the school board and school district board positions. So I'm just wondering, that's in your opinion, what kind of challenges you think that's most important that facing, the challenge of facing the urban unified school district at this time?
And again, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of give my opinions on this. But I think right now we've got two major problems, challenges that we're facing with Irvine Unified. Obviously, the big one right off the bat is the pandemic with COVID-19, how it's impacted the ability of our students, our teachers, and our staff to get together on campuses and allow them to learn. And I think everybody agrees that we do want to have kids back in school
Mm-hmm.
with in-person instruction. We're just not quite at that point yet, but it's a changing landscape. What was nice is the fact that our district was very proactive in trying to get people's feedback as to how they wanted the language learning to take place, or to have how they wanted the instruction to take place. But even last Friday, the governor announced some new changes to the criteria in terms of opening up for schools. So this is a changing environment. And while I appreciate that IUSD has put a lot of plans in place, what we're really interested and focused on seeing is how those plans get executed, because we're talking about people's lives here. And it's important that all of the people have an opportunity to give their opinions, and that the procedures are executed in a manner that people feel is safe, and that our teachers, our students, and our staff, when they finally get back to campus, are going to feel safe and comfortable in that environment. And so that's a huge challenge. It's an ongoing challenge. And obviously, with the election happening in November and the board members taking office in December, this is something that any member who's a person who's elected to the school board is going to have to be dealing with. I don't think anybody anticipating that we're going to have this whole problem resolved before December. So we're really looking at facing these challenges moving into that term. The other part about it that connects with this, also COVID related, is the economic challenge and how it affects our budgets moving forward. One of the things that did happen initially by the governor was he said that there would be across the budget cuts for every district around the state. They were able to do some things in Sacramento to kind of change that around. And even a couple weeks ago when we had our last school board meeting, there was some discussion as to how we're going to be able to address some of those financial challenges. And Irvine's going to be in a pretty decent position to make sure that we can still provide services going forward. But obviously, even in this time period where we've had to purchase additional PPE, prepare our classrooms, hire more staff and teachers to make sure that we're able to execute this plan so that all kids have access to education during this next school year. But looking forward into the next year, where some of those cuts were deferred, we're looking at potentially a 10% cut across the board for IUSD. And that's a significant hit. That's far, when you think about what happened with the Great Recession, we're talking about those levels of an impact. And so we need to be really careful with how we go about examining where those cuts take place, if we do need to have cuts, making sure that we don't cut back on teachers, make sure that our in-person education continues to happen, and that the children in IUSD receive the level of education that we as parents and as taxpayers and as citizens in this community, expect. And so that's going to be a really, really big challenge moving on. And even as our society kind of progresses on, we're constantly facing challenges. The social justice issues that have happened this summer, having kids deal with the mental health aspects of COVID. There's a lot of different things that are happening as we resume this school year and as our kids move forward. And so it's very important to have someone who understands the issues in this district, cares about kids, understands teachers and staff and their responsibility, and is willing to work with all of the stakeholders to make IUSD as great of an institution as it's been, and ensure that our kids get a top-notch quality education as they have received in the years past.
Thank you. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And COVID-19 really has posed a very strong impact in the community. And even though we all face the same issues, such as the long distance learning, but because all people have in the really in the different so different social economic class, so they may have the different challenges. Which one? That's something that some people really cannot imagine the ones other people are fighting with right now.
Absolutely. And the thing about our district is about 20% of our students are socioeconomically disadvantaged. And so even though we tend to think as Irvine as a very well-to-do community, the reality of it is there are a lot of kids that are in circumstances that are very challenging. And so it's important that kids have access to the internet. And because obviously with distance learning, you need to make sure that they have access. And we need to make sure that kids that have parents at work that rely on the school buses to bring their kids to school, that transportation network is intact and is safe. And in my particular area, our schools are the ones that are mainly rely on the bus service. So if your kids are Turtle Rock, Rancho, Vista Verde, Oak Creek, that's where the bus service is. And so it's important that our kids have that available to them. And then the other thing that I've been hearing about and seeing is that we obviously as an immigrant community have a lot of students that are ESL students as well. And so the challenges of being in a classroom environment are difficult as it is for an ESL student. But now imagine a circumstance where you're in distance learning, you don't really have access to your classmates and your teacher in that ordinary way that you can kind of learn from each other in that way. And it's a greater challenge for our students in that respect too.
Thank you. Thank you, to see that the same issue from the different perspective. I think that's very important. So you can really solve the issue.
Yeah.
So my second question that, as you say that, the Chinese community really represents a lot in the IUSD. And I think that's great for the diversity. So we know that's very important for some the Chinese American to serve as the board and to represent that part of the population. So my question that, what do you think you are the best one to represent this Chinese American community in Irvine to be served in the Irvine Unified School District?
That's a great question. And right off the top, you'd actually mentioned my involvement with the South Coast Chinese Cultural Association and the Irvine Chinese School.
Right.
And so my kids actually, when we first moved to Irvine, they were enrolled in the Chinese school and started taking the classes. And then after I ran for school board in 2012, I had an opportunity to serve actually on the board of directors in 2013. And after my first year on the board, I was actually elected chairman moving forward. So being someone who is relatively new to Irvine, I really appreciated the fact that the leadership in the Chinese community, because a lot of them are represented in that organization, which has been around for over 40 years, they were putting their faith and trust in me to kind of execute their vision moving forward. And so from an educational institution standpoint, while I was on the board and while I was leading the board, we were able to get WASC accreditation. And we were able to also get foreign language credit, not just credit, but just foreign language credit at the high schools in Irvine for the kids that had actually gone through the program. And that was obviously a big deal for us. But we've also expanded a lot of the cultural activities. We've made it annual events for people to show up for our Moon Festival in the fall, for our Chinese school celebration, New Year celebration in the spring. We created in partnership with Pacific Symphony and Segerstrom, the Lantern Festival, which is going on for a number of years now. And then we threw a mass 40-year anniversary bash that really announced our presence as a cultural institution. And we've expanded to build a Chinese orchestra. We have our different performance teams that go out, or dance teams that go out and perform for the community. And so really it's not just being in the community, but spreading Chinese culture within the community and establishing ourselves as a major institution. And so the fact that I've had that experience, that I've worked with not only our community partners in the Chinese community, but also our educational partners with IUSD and IPSF and within City of Irvine, I have that experience of leading and speaking up for the Chinese community and being a representative for the Chinese community. And the thing about some of those partnerships is we have public safety issues that are in the present in the city, but we also have a very heavily immigrant population. So it's important to have that connection. And so we've had, you know, coffee or tea with the chief of police. We've had public safety forums. We have the candidate forum that SCCCA had put on a couple weeks ago. But that's an annual, not an annual thing, but every year we have elections. We do that as a means of ensuring that the community has access to these individuals who could be their elected officials. And so having had that experience and having had that leadership experience, serving on the board in the manner that I have, is very much equivalent to the types of things that I'm going to be doing in the school board. And having been a representative for the Chinese community in these various capacities, I'm going to continue to be able to do that and demonstrate what my commitment is to the Chinese community.
Great. And Cyril, if I'm not mistaken, I think you also serve at the finance commission of the school district board. Is that right?
I did. I had the honor of being appointed by Sharon Wallen to be her representative on the finance committee back in that time period of about 2015, 2016. And one of the major things that we were working on during that time period was Measure E. Before it was turned into Measure E, but kind of putting together those pieces as to what Measure E would eventually become. And Measure E is the school bond that we put onto the ballot that the voters approved in 2016 that allowed a significant reinvestment into Irvine schools. As you know, the city of Irvine goes back 40 some odd years. And so when some of our campuses were built, whether it was Turtle Rock, where my kids go to school, or Rancho, or even University High School, a lot of the schools have been around for a long period of time. And you look kind of in the northern part of town and you see, oh, these great new schools are being built and they're big and they've got these fancy science labs and the rest of it. Well, we want to make sure that all of the students have an opportunity to have world-class facilities and access as well. And the way to accomplish that was basically through a bond measure. But we wanted to make sure that everybody had access to this money. And it was a very important investment by our community in education in order to make sure that our schools remain strong for years to come. And, comes down to it, property values. Everybody wants to make sure that their property values are safe. And one of the major reasons why people continue to come to Irvine and why Irvine is an internationally renowned, well-known city is because of the fact that we have fantastic schools. We have fantastic just amenities and everything for everybody.
Totally agree. A lot of urban residents, the primary reason for them to come to Irvine is just for the education, for the safety.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know that's for this election for the District 3, it's a little bit crowded. I think we have 4 candidates, and three of whom also have some of the Chinese the background, the connection with the Chinese community. So my question that is, so why do you think you are the candidate for this position?
Well, for me, it's really about the investment in this community that I have made in terms of my efforts and my demonstrated leadership. I really have that track record that people can look back on in terms of my activism within the Chinese community, within the education committee. As I've indicated, I ran in 2012, got involved with the South Coast Chinese Cultural Association, led that organization for a number of years, served, as you pointed out, on the finance committee. We also served on the environmental committee for the city of Irvine way back in 2013 as well, that time period. But because of my leadership and because I have made that commitment and working on these particular issues year after year after year, I actually have the support of a lot of the important stakeholders in this particular race. The other members of the Board of Education, Sharon Wallen, Paul Bakota, Lauren Brooks, Ira Glaske, have all endorsed me in this particular race. I also have the support of the Irvine Teachers Association, which represents all of the teachers in the district. I also have the support of CSEA, which is the California School Employees Association, which represents the people that work in the schools, whether they're the bus drivers, the janitors, the nurses, all of the people that help the school function. They have also endorsed me in this particular race. And so they have acknowledged that I have the experience, the knowledge to basically step into this position. And so I think I am best positioned because of that, because of the challenges that I mentioned at the very beginning with COVID and with the financial challenges that we're looking at. You really want to have someone who's had that experience, not just somebody who's gone through the school system or not someone who spent a small amount of time on the finance committee. You want to have someone who's been invested in working on these issues for a number of years, because there is a significant learning curve that you have to climb in order to understand these issues. And you need to be in a position where you have existing relationships with the various stakeholders. As I mentioned, the teachers, the staff, the other members of the Board of Education. You want to be able to have these relationships where you can continue working and making progress and making sure that we can get these things done because of these massive challenges that we're facing. And the last thing that I would say is just the nature of what I do. I'm an advocate. That's what I get paid on a daily basis to do, to fight for things that benefit everyone, not just myself, not just my family. I mean, my kids are a huge part of why I'm in this race, but it's because I am a trained advocate. This is what I do for a living. I figure out stuff, I fight for issues, I fight for causes, I fight to make sure that our voices are heard, and that there's execution on those particular points, and that our students are the ones that we put first and foremost when we're going through this crisis, and making sure that they continue to receive the best education possible. And that's the job of the district, right? Is to make sure that not only are the plans made, but they're executed in a way that does the best for everyone and for the community.
Thank you so much, Cyril. Really appreciate your time, to coming here. And I think that's wonderful. We really want to wish you the best for your campaign. Yeah, we also want to let people know that if any one of you really want to support, volunteer, or do the fundraising for Cyril Youth campaign, please go to his website for all the contact information. And his website is www.cyrilyou4IUSD.com, which is CYRILYUFORIUSD.com. And I know he's also very active in the Instagram and the Facebook. So I think all the information will be there, and just let people to go to your website to find you.
Yeah, thank you very much for mentioning the website as well as the social media. These days, you can't really do much without having some presence on social media, even if it's Instagram. I know the kids are far better at that type of stuff than we old timers are, but we're figuring that stuff out too.
Definitely, I think that's very important. You mentioned those stuff there, and a lot of people will maybe mention the WeChat, but I also think that it's very important too that we can try the social media so we can get connected with people coming from the different community. So that means we really press for the diversity, and we can really get connected. And that means we can get all the voices be heard.
And if I may plug the other schools for them, a lot of them are very active on Instagram. So if you look at the various elementary schools within IUSD, or even the PTAs for that matter, go find them on Instagram. You're going to find out what they're doing. They're pushing out a lot of important information for parents to make sure that they know what's happening. So make sure you check them out too. That's a key part of making sure this whole thing works well for everybody.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks again, okay? All the best. God bless you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care.